I would love to start by asking, each one of you to introduce yourself and maybe highlight how you are working on this reimagination of the financing of the future. And let me turn first to Angela.
Hi. Thank you, everyone, for having me here, and especially thank you to JFF and Maria. My name is Angela Ceresnie. I'm the CEO of Climb Credit. For those of you who aren't familiar with Climb, we provide a payments and financing solution to high-quality higher educational programs that are offering skills training to their students. The way our product works is we find schools that are offering career training programs, often short duration, 3-6 month programs that are low cost. The average program that we're working with is about $10,000 or less. And then we work with the school, confirm that the outcomes actually generate an ROI for the students who attend. And then if they do, we become part of their checkout process and enable the schools, often for the first time, to be able to provide affordable and accessible financing and payment solutions to the students so that they can, they don't need to pay often in cash all up front. What we're working on, obviously, we've been focused on this segment of education since 2014. Have sort of been into the alternative education market before it was a thing to be into. And when a lot of people suggested we turn towards the traditional market, we sort of stayed our course. But some of the differences between our product and a traditional loan product is that we do understand the affordability and the return of the education, and we don't work with schools where that math doesn't work. And our schools all take what we call a risk share. So they defer a often large percentage of the revenue that they'd be earning on an individual student and defer that to after the student graduates and starts paying off their obligation. Therefore, sort of in a way that's unique in education finance, our schools are completely aligned with both Climb, the lender, and the students who attend on the students' success.
Ruben?
Hi, everybody. My name is Ruben Harris. I'm the CEO of a company called CareerKarma. And so we're not a financing provider, but we are a managed marketplace that matches career transitioners to job training programs so that they can get jobs in tech in about a year. So we have about 450 different job training programs that we work with focused on software engineering, design, or data science. We do work with financing providers like Angela and Climb Credit to make sure that they're connected to outcomes-driven financing. And the only job training programs that we match people to have to have a income share agreement, a money back guarantee, or deferred tuition options so that people aren't put in a bad position if they go to one of those programs. So anybody that comes to our website goes to something called Fast Track, which is like a common application that they can see at careerkarma.com/apply. And our algorithm will not just match them with the right training, but a support system that will be there before the boot camp, during the job search, and for the rest of their life. We have a connections to about 2,000 companies. They can upload their projects and we can connect them with people like them. And I think for this conversation, I really want to focus more on the human-centered side of the financing. I think obviously we're going to talk about deferred tuition, income share agreement, and things like that. But I think that there are things that the 44 million Americans that are now laid off because of COVID-19 are dealing with that we may not realize, like credit scores that prevent them from even being able to take advantage of a lot of things that we're going to be talking about. We have about 300,000 people that come to us every month, so I'm happy to share about that. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Jacob, can you speak about some of your really cool innovations you are working on?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on today. And Community Investment Management is an institutional impact investment manager. So what we do is we invest debt capital into innovative models that try to align incentives between underserved and historically underrepresented communities so that they have better access to financial services or things that enable them to pursue an education, pursue skills training, and also support small businesses and low-income households, particularly immigrants and other low-served communities across the board. We've been interested in the education financing space for a number of years and have a ISA financing facility with a coding bootcamp called Kinsey Academy, and are really focused on how do we think about aligning outcomes for students with the schools and with investors like us. And it's great to be here with such a panel that represents all of this, to have Angela as a provider who's out there providing this financing, Ruben, you working with students to get them in the pipeline as they think about pursuing opportunities. You know, Isabelle, you're financing some of these schools and models on the equity side, and we're supporting on the debt side. So I think we've got a great perspective here, and thank you all for having us and including us as part of the conversation.
Yeah, let me ask maybe a broad question around the mix of stakeholders that are involved in education financing, ranging from government, you touched on this, employers, Angela, you mentioned that, individuals, Jacob, you mentioned that through ISAs and loans. How do you see this mix evolve, and where would you like to see this mix evolve, and where are the greatest innovations you are seeing right now across those different types of stakeholders for the future of financing? And Ruben, let me start with you this time.
So when I think about education financing, obviously in the beginning when boot camps first started, it was all pay up front. And that worked for a lot of people, but most people don't have even $10,000 to be able to pay upfront for school. And then there was things like Skills Fund and other players that were able to come out so people could get a loan, so that people could pay for different things. And then the income share agreement started getting super, super hot. Hold on one second. Started getting super, super hot. And there were variations on the model like deferred tuition. I think what I'm really excited about is actually the employer as payer model. There's programs like what Adobe Digital Academy has done, things like what Cadillac is doing, where they're getting employers involved to finance a lot of the education. It's not as popular right now, but it's super, super important. And in my opinion, I actually think the cost of education is going to go down to zero, kind of like how it is in the rest of the world. But for now, it's important for us to just align with the players that are focused on this outcomes-driven education. And I think Angela is doing something super, super special that I want her to talk about. But that I'll say you guys are familiar with the main things, but I think the thing that I'm most excited about is the employer's payer model.
Angela, do you want to comment on this? Do you see also hope in employer-based financing structures in this environment?
Absolutely. I think like the answer to education finance, as long as people are paying for it, or as long as it's being provided by, organizations who need to be compensated in some way, needs to be a mix of investment from various parties that are all kind of committed to the same goal, which is people actually getting skills that they can leverage in their careers. And employers are a huge part of that. So, up until most recently, employers have reaped all of the benefit of people getting and gaining skills in the educational market and haven't had to pay for any of it. So I think that they're definitely a contributor and can help, at least if nothing else, bring down the cost or help contribute to either their employees or future employees' cost. I think the other big innovation that we led the charge on starting in 2014, or we're kind of one of the leaders on, and now seeing a lot of other innovative models around ISAs and deferred tuition, which is a product that we offer, is around this kind of like outcomes-based model or incentive aligned model. So historically, if you got a student loan, if you get a student loan from the federal government today, or sort of a traditional student loan, and what's always been sort of available historically, the school gets all the money up front, and then the student owes it no matter what happens. And Both those things I think are intrinsically flawed. The school getting all the money up front, while obviously that does help the school invest and reinvest in their operations, really creates a sort of a break in the value chain where the school is going to be more incentivized to find the next student than to make sure that student that has already paid really is sort of supported through their job search. And you see examples on both sides, but in general, that's kind of how the incentives work. And so by having some kind of hold back to the school, if nothing else, you just keep them engaged with the student to understand if they don't have a lot of students being able to pay, like, why is that? And it's almost always because the job search didn't go that well. One of the things we're working on at Climb is creating almost like a loan ISA hybrid where the student actually gets the loan when they start the program. So similar to really kind of the traditional financing. Some money goes to the school up front, so the school can obviously invest in their operations, but the student doesn't actually pay anything until they get a job. So that's kind of similar to the ISA structure. And if after a job search period, which will probably be around 2 to 3 years, depending on the structure in the school, then the student won't owe anything at all, and the debt will essentially be canceled. That's a product that we're building and expecting to launch sometime either later this year or next year. We had hoped to launch it a little earlier, but obviously with COVID, some of our roadmap items got changed a little bit.
I forgot to mention 2 more things. Can I say them really fast? One of them that I think is super important as well is the living stipend. So there's only one player that we currently work with that offers it, but essentially it's when, even if you can get your education for free, paying your bills is important. Obviously unemployment is helpful, but everybody doesn't have unemployment insurance. And so some of these programs are providing $1,500 a month, which is super, super powerful, and they'll tack it onto the ISA. And that has proven time and time again to be a key to get people into a job. So that's one thing. The other thing, which is something that Kenzie Academy used to do, is where they partner with a staffing agency called Kelly Services. And while you are in the program, you can work for another company like customer service while you're learning how to become an engineer, which was allowing people to pay their bills and develop the soft skills that were necessary to get the job. And so I think those 3 things, so employers pair, living stipend, and working for an employer while you're in the boot camp is a very powerful combination.
Yeah, Jacob, turning to you on income share agreements, given all your work there, how do you see the student demand side, the funder side, and are they an interesting innovation in this current environment?
Yeah, I think that income share agreements in the current environment are in many ways a elegant solution to the uncertainty that students have that they will be able to achieve the income increase that they're seeking with this training. And they do. I think the point, I couldn't agree more with what Angela and Ruben you're saying on schools being accountable and also needing to make sure that we create environments where students can actually pursue these degrees and succeed during them. I mean, ultimately, one of the challenges we have is an Obama administration era gainful employment structure where we thought about holding for-profit schools accountable, and ultimately building off of that to extend that now also to nonprofit schools, where ultimately students need to have a good return on investment for their education. The idea that, Angela, what you laid out, the idea that we have students who are going to school without visibility into what that education, how that cost will be realized in terms of generating income in their future, and that they're left holding all of the risk, is unconscionable. And so I think what we need to do is figure out the systems whereby students can have alignment around the outcomes that they achieve, and that schools ultimately are participating in that. And I think an income share agreement can be used for that. It also can be used as a tool to charge students too much money as well. And so I think we need regulation, we need a lot of clarity around these different instruments so that they can be structured and used correctly. In the COVID environment, an income share agreement is actually great for a student because if they do not achieve the threshold of return, then the threshold of their income, then they're not required to make payments. However, we also have to make sure that the terms and everything is clear and transparent for those students. And so there's a good group of folks that are working on piloting these initiatives so that we can include underserved students who have difficulty because of credit scores and others to get into those programs. And when they achieve success, ultimately the schools are able to see the benefit of that with the value that they've created. But to the extent that there are Wall Street investors looking for high yield type returns off the backs of students, I think that COVID makes clear that you need to be patient and aligned, and that's why impact investors have a great role to play in shaping the industry to produce really good outcomes for students and schools altogether.
Great, thank you. Ruben, coming back to your comment about the need for support services alongside financing, ideally. Can you expand on what you're seeing and hearing from your students, and especially on something that was already happening before COVID, which is an increasing aversion that some researchers have demonstrated to be even higher in certain communities, Latinx and Black students, for loans in particular, given how much some of those communities may have been burnt out in the past with loans?
Yeah. So when you think about the 44 million people that are unemployed, most of them are women and people of color. Also, something that was pretty alarming to me I saw is that half of Black adults in America right now don't have a job. And when you think about their needs, the digital divide is real, especially for Black and Latinx people. And so from what we've seen out of the people that want to get these jobs and go to these trainings, even though they have the financing taken care of and they can go to it, a lot of times they don't have a laptop, for example. And so something that we've been doing is initially over the last couple of years, we just created a community inside of CareerKarma where people would share laptops with each other, especially after they got a job and the company paid for it. They would just give a laptop back. So it was kind of like a grassroots barter system. But now we're actually taking it to another level, and we're launching this campaign officially in July called Reskill America, where we're raising $500,000 and giving away 5,000 laptops to these individuals to start. But the comment that I made earlier about credit scores is interesting, because most of these people that are unemployed, a lot of times they have bad credit, not because they're lazy, but sometimes they had to run up the debt to take care of their sick father or mother, right? We just got hit with the pandemic, right? And it's affected older people for the most part. And even then, they couldn't take advantage of ISAs. Jacob talked earlier about how this is the moment for ISAs to shine. But if people that need the ISAs the most can't do it, then it's a problem. And there's a great story. The first person that we placed in CareerKarma tried to get into a boot camp, got rejected from all of them except one that we found him. He had about $600,000 in debt, not because he was bad. So all of his college was paid for. He had tried to go to medical school to be a neurosurgeon. 5 members of his family died during a 5-year period. And every time he took the exams, he failed because of the trauma. And long story short, he finished the boot camp in a year, got a job making $145,000. He's a single father. He's Black, and he talks about the whole story on a podcast that we run called Breaking Into Startups. But I think that as we think about education financing, we got to think about resources that aren't just laptops, maybe like travel to commute, Wi-Fi services, and things like that. I love what Jack Dorsey just did with the $10 million to every single child in Oakland. So that they could have laptops and Wi-Fi, but we have to think about these things and maybe other proxies for ways to pay that is not just a credit score, because that's really filtering out a lot of really talented people. We got to fix that.
Thank you.
I think it's being clear about all the barriers, right? So you realize that just getting someone the financing, or just showing someone what the boot camps are, what the programs are that are going to get them earning more money is not actually enough. And that there are just so many barriers, and COVID is just like is just exacerbating that. And I think everyone here probably, I know everyone on this panel, but also everyone hopefully at this conference is sort of committed to whatever we can do to help lift these barriers, whether it's joining forces with a company like CareerKarma and the Reskill America, or there's so many initiatives out there. But in addition to all of our day jobs, we need to be committed to sort of helping unlock those barriers that we might not realize are there or are being exacerbated with the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really need all types, right? We need policymakers involved. We need good regulation. We need initiatives from investors, people who are in the communities helping get products out there and reach, and folks like Angela who are just doing a great job at financing these types of programs, but also creating alignment around how ultimately different stakeholders can succeed. Like if students are not getting a good ROI, the system doesn't work. And so it all needs to be based on that as an end goal. And there's plenty of opportunity to build a much more equitable educational system if we get it right and start with the student.
That's a great way to conclude this panel. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you to JFF for inviting us to speak on this important topic.
Thank you, Isabelle.